Before the success stories, the progress, there was you. You who made a choice to grow, to inspire, to overcome your own challenges. At NASM, we're in service of your limitless potential because when you keep growing, we all get stronger. And we'll never stop making your journey our mission. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified personal trainer.
Welcome to this week's Master Instructor Roundtable. I am Wendy Batts here with my friend and co-host, Dr. Marty Miller. Marty, how are you today?
Doing great today. Wendy, how about yourself?
I am doing very well. Thank you. Today's topic, I know we get emails about training our active older adult population, and I feel like lately we've gotten more and more. So Marty and I wanted to do a Master Instructor Roundtable, really focusing on optimizing, hence the OPT part, active aging. And so, Marty, I know you get this as well. You, especially living in Florida, I know in working in the country clubs, you've dealt with the senior population a lot yourself. So, should be a good one.
Yeah, and you know what, Wendy? It's painful for me to say this, and I'll speak for myself, not you. But yes, I'll throw myself into this because at 51. If you look at my activity, years of martial arts, I'll go and play competitive pickleball for 3 to 6 hours. You know, by the scope of active, yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly active and want to continue to be so. So I'm on the very, 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 very early ages of this. But there's no time like the present to focus on what we're doing because, you know, I guarantee you, looking back to when I had family members in their early 50s, when I was a teenager, there's no way they did as much activity as I did. And I'm not giving it up anytime soon.
Yes, well, I hope not, because and one of the things I wanted to really focus on as well, I think it's important to mention when we think about, you know, we used to call everyone the elderly population, then it went to seniors, and now we're changing our tune a little bit. And there's even an NASM course on active older adults in that population. And it's because we need to look past the number and look at the individual. And you're going to see throughout this webinar or podcast that we are really going to talk about looking at each person and not necessarily their age. Because for some reason, Marty, I think people will start to get really kind of sketchy when someone in the gym walks in and they're 65 or older, and then they feel like they have to kind of shut down and do just very minimal things. When in all reality, there are people in their 80s and 90s still running marathons and still They're more active than I am. And so we don't want to just look at the number. I think it's important to really think about that individual as a whole and where they're starting from, and then what do they want to maintain or keep throughout the rest of their life.
Yeah. And Wendy, you know, I love doing these podcasts with you because we come up with a strategy and then instantly we throw that strategy out the window and we start a conversation. Because again, you know, I'm a perfect example of very early on. Obviously, we're going to talk about more seniors, but you could also look at the inverse of this, how unhealthy our youth is, right? So it's kind of like some of the seniors and then people in my age in that middle are far outpacing and doing better in a way than sometimes with our youth. So we might come back in a couple of weeks or months and talk about that because it's not a good sign with how they're really kind of coming out of the gate slowly.
100%. And I think, you know, when we're reading through and looking at this one particular slide, I can't emphasize this enough because when you think about, you know, falls in general and why when we emphasize the importance of balance training, why we do so. But look at this stat. Falls are responsible for 90% of the increase of hip fractures and are the sixth, and I think that's actually going up higher or decreasing cause of death among patients over 65 years old. And so we think about this, if someone 65 years or older has a hip fracture, the chances of them dying sooner are increased a substantial amount in comparison to someone that doesn't fall. And so I know my dad is 84. I am paranoid of him falling. He's actually fallen in front of me before. And you think, okay, you know what? I'm strong. I work out. I can help this person get up if they fall. and they're like dead weight. And so it's really, really hard for me to see that happening to my elderly father when this man used to play golf every day. He was super active, but then took time off to help his wife, who unfortunately had passed, because he had to take time away of doing something that he was normally doing. And now, just in a short amount of time, seeing how fragile he's become, it's super scary because, Marty, I'm telling you, it happened so fast.
Right.
Super scary.
And when you look also at what happens with somebody who has to go to hospital due to fractures, how quickly they decline and the increased chance of death, it's critical. And it's something so simple of working on their gait, working on their balance, throw in there some upper body resistance and strength training so they hopefully can absorb a fall if they have it. But it's just something we have to address.
Mm-hmm. And there are different, again, if we look at the slide, there are different types of ways that people happen to fall and different things that can occur. I mean, again, are they falling because they're weak? They have some sort of osteoporosis and their bones give out? Is it something that just happened to them personally? Was there environmental factors? And so again, when we think about training on unstable surfaces, it's to actually help them prevent things happening when they're stepping off a curb or getting in and out of a car. Those are things when we're talking about external environments and things that we can control and help them get stronger doing. Get in and out of bed, not just standing and tripping over themselves. So again, I think all of this stuff is important when you're finding out information about your client. What are they currently doing? Where do they feel that their weaknesses are? Because research is showing that altered balance is the greatest collaborator towards the falls in the elderly. We know this. And so the correlation between a balance deficit and incident of falls, it's a huge one. And we're seeing it. I've seen it personally. And unfortunately, we're seeing this happen more and more. But evidence suggests that exercise is going to reduce the risks of this, hence why we're in here. And if you're working with the active older adult population, why this is so important. But we need to actually help our clients lift weights and lift heavy, no matter what age they are. We want to focus on bone mass. We want to focus on muscle mass. We want to focus on all different aspects. And that's why I think when we talk about, you saw the title, optimizing active age or aging, it's because the OPT model truly is an answer no matter what age you are, because we hit all of those factors within each program that someone should design for any of their athletes.
Right. And really, if you have somebody in that senior category, if you can, get them to break even year over year. And what I mean by that is sometimes I know they're going to get a gain, but if they stayed at the same level year to year, you're actually still gaining 2 to 4 to 5% because statistically they would have had a decline. So imagine if you get somebody 2 to 3% stronger, 2 to 3% more muscle mass, 2 to 3%, whatever, it's actually almost doubled that gain because statistically at that age, they'd have been reverting backwards, right? So when they're like, I didn't see that much gains, legitimately, you could say, well, we had a 2 or 3% increase, but statistically you would have been 3 to 5% down. That's a 7% return on your investment, right? So it's understanding those statistics that can really make a big difference for people.
Absolutely.
So I can jump into this here. So the variables for basic programming, if you guys have been around Wendy and I, we talk about the OPT model. We're always talking about our acute variables. Let the model do the work for you. It's been researched, it's been designed, it's been tested. These are the secret sauce. These are the ingredients that get you the outcomes that you're looking for. If you fail to follow these acute variables, right, you're not going to get the specific outcomes. Now, day one, are you allowed to have some flexibility, right? Maybe someone does one set, but you're working towards X, Y, or Z. These are established as the best protocols, and you may have to work somebody into that. But please, please, please follow these acute variables because they will absolutely make the difference in the outcome. And I'll go over a couple of them here, and we'll touch on them lightly. We can go into deeper conversation. But the mode, right? Is it a stationary or recumbent cycling? Is it water or aquatic exercise? Treadmill with handrail support? Look at the mode of exercise. Then you've got frequency. How often are you doing? Is it 3 to 5 days per week of moderate intensity activities or 3 days a week of vigorous, right? There is somebody who's working out harder, they may need more rest, but get the ball rolling. If they can only start with 1 day a week, don't get frustrated with that, right? Meet them where they're at, but the goal is to get them into these acute variables. And the intensity, of course, you're going to start at a lower intensity, a VO2 max or effort, right? Perceived rate of exertion, 40%. But it's okay if they're medically cleared to eventually get them to that higher level. That's 100% okay. Just give them the right rest that they need. We've got then duration, right? 30 to 60 minutes, 8 to 10 minute bouts are great as well. Of course, you're going to do your movement assessments. Then we have our different flexibility continuum. Soft tissue work is critically important. All of our texts, we're going to give you the different protocols on how to do it, as well as any contraindications. So there are things that you may have to take into an account at a higher level for someone that's in that senior population. But there's so many methods around it now with the massage guns and other techniques, where when Wendy and I started, we had to get somebody on the ground to truly basically do foam rolling. So understand those flexibility continuums. And then, yes, it's not a bad thing to do resistance training. Let them pick up some weight and let them move into the power phase, because that's what people lose the fastest if they're not training it. And power to a senior could be just catching their balance and staying upright compared to falling. So obviously then you've got your special considerations, but I touched on that. So these are the critical components to designing a program.
Yes. And Marty, I mean, I think especially when you were just talking about self-myofascial techniques, make sure that you did go through the contraindications and then find substitutes. So if you don't have, if they can't get it up and down on the floor, Marty just mentioned this, then what do you do? And we've gotten that question before. Well, there are some other types of considerations. Is there like an elevated table or, a bigger surface? Even some gyms have like a platform that's like a stage where somebody can get on and then they can easily scoot off and you can assist them. There are the massage percussion guns now, by different people, whether it's you're using a Theragun or you're using a Hypervolt or whatever the case may be. There's heated heads now for people. Sometimes that the heat can help somebody that is having pain or some discomfort to help kind of massage that while using the percussion. But again, it's very, very important to make sure that they're cleared, because if somebody has osteoarthritis or osteoporosis, then it may not be something that you want to put that much pressure on. So you have to be really careful with that particular implementation within your programming. However, you also want to remember that it is self-myofascial techniques. This is where it's very important, no matter what, that the client is the one that's putting themselves through the modality and you are not applying pressure, because if something does happen, then you are 100% responsible. So again, unless you are a licensed therapist to touch and do some sort of manual therapy, I say this just because we have to be very careful with, especially the aging population, because of bone density. So just make sure that you're licensed to do so or demonstrate it if cleared, and you'll know so by the doctors and if they can do deep tissue massages and all that.
Nope, love it. Absolutely. And for those of you joining today on the Master Instructor Roundtable, Marty Miller here with co-host Wendy Batts. We're talking about optimizing the OPT model as we address our active aging population. So as we move here it is, the model. Very simple, very easy, a step approach to periodization, right? You do it linearly first, where you start with either correctives, if you have that skill set from a corrective exercise specialist standpoint. Then you go into your stabilization endurance, working on posture, working on lower level of intensities, but longer duration, postural type of things, balance, right? Coordination, getting people to understand how to move their body efficiently. Then you're allowed to add load into that efficient movement in our strength blocks. And then you can add speed. Now, speed looks differently for everybody. Speed even looks different among elite athletes. So speed's going to look different between what you can do and what they can do, but you're still going to let them earn the right to do some level of speed training at some point. The example I use, I may hand my mom a medicine ball. She might toss it to me and I hand it back. I don't have to go back and forth as fast as possible, but at least allowing her central nervous system to elicit some rate of force development is critical, whether it's for the fun and enjoyment of it, whether it's to show the progression, whether it's to burn calories at a different level, different rate, whether it's, again, to get those muscles to fire faster in case they need them. But that's the beauty of the model. Everything's baked into it. Just follow those acute variables and move people along in that progressive manner.
Yeah. And I think it's also important too, when you're looking at the model and the different aspects, you're looking at the template and you're saying, okay, speed, agility, quickness, like Marty was talking about, just throwing the medicine ball. you're going to see, we've actually shown you some things that you can do on a power side. But one of the things that I think is also very important to implement, especially with active aging adults, is incorporating things like the speed ladder. Because Marty, one of the reasons, if you read a lot of the research that's out there, one of the reasons that people fall is because they begin to shuffle their feet versus pick up their feet and walk. And so in order to teach someone how to pick up their feet and becoming more aware of their gait and making sure that they're not shuffling, even if it's slight, is doing things like the speed ladder, forcing them to pick up their feet, forcing them to think about their memory and their patterning and going into different planes, like walking side by side. Just, it doesn't have to be running. And when we think speed ladder, like you said, Marty, everyone's amount of speed is going to differ, but also that is an activity of daily living that is preventative. And it's something that is not just specifically on balance. You have to think is what's going to be different and helpful for your clients. So if you do really want to focus on working with the elderly population or aging population, think about how important this is, but then also think about safety. So you need to be there with them at all times. So if they do start to lose their balance or they start to shuffle and trip within the speed ladder, you're there to help them to ensure that they are safe throughout.
Yeah. And I've been to facilities, nursing homes, et cetera, where they play, kind of volleyball with a balloon. And to them, it is still reactionary. It is still them trying to hit it and track it in space. So that again can be that simple for somebody that's in that, higher level senior population, but you'd be shocked how much fun that is to them, right? It doesn't seem like a workout. It's gamification and they want to do it. They want to do it. They want to get better. They want to play. So that's critical too. Make this fun. And there's a lot of ways you can do that with some experience and creativity.
Yes. All right. So think about this. We just talked, Marty and I go over and over the importance of assessments. And this is when you're working with, again, an active population that's aging. You want to think, can they do an overhead squat? Hopefully they can. And even if it's assisted, you want to always set them up in the 5 kinetic chain checkpoints. You're going to have them try to squat to their best ability. I usually put a chair behind them or have a bar in front of them. So therefore, even if they have to have an assisted squat, whether they're getting up or coming down, I'm still able to see how their body's moving. And so it doesn't have to be something that I would do with my younger population, especially if they do struggle getting in and out of a chair. But that is super important because that is life. They have to be able to get up. They have to be able to get down. You really want to strengthen this. So it also is giving you an idea like, do they have the strength to even do this on their own without assistance? If you're not sure and you're still wanting to do some other upper body stuff, then doing the push and pull assessments are going to give you a ton of information. Are they really rounded in the upper body? And unfortunately, as people age, you're going to see the forward shoulders and forward head start to become more and more apparent, and they start losing mobility throughout their thoracic spine. And this is when it's crucial to try to get that mobility back before they start aging and staying in that position to where then their bones become accustomed to that. And we start to see that being their new normal. So we want to try to always think what assessments are going to be best for them. You also want to show, tell, do, because we know now more and more people are active. However, some of the population that we have to date really didn't go to the gym back in the day like we are now. Some people have never been inside a facility and don't know how to squat. They don't know how to do a push or press. So be sure too that you're very clear, demonstrate what you're asking them to do, and then make sure that you're ready to take notes quickly, because you don't want them just to push and pull forever. You want to be able to gather as much information as quickly as possible so you're getting the best information for the program.
Yeah. And guys and gals, like we're looking for progress, not perfection. Some people get stuck that if their posture is not perfect, they don't want to move them to the next phase. Well, it's great if you can get them back to ideal, but what's ideal for them? And if you take the CES and if you really study anatomy, yes, would I want perfect? Sure, not going to happen. But can I work with somebody in a power phase that has a little bit of rounded shoulders? Yeah, because I'm going to know biomechanically where I shouldn't put their arms above their head or have them do things to where that posture is going to create an injury. But that doesn't mean I couldn't do something here, because what if they fall, right? So it doesn't mean that I'm going to eliminate a complete phase of training. They may always be doing correctives every single day. They may actually warm up and start doing a set of stabilization training every single day. I might then put them into a power phase that's appropriate to them. And then I might finish with some more correctives. That is how eventually, as you get better with this model, you can really create awesome programs. We have to teach it in a kind of a staggered, progressive way where it's this, then this, then this. But we've done many Master Instructor Roundtables on how you can manipulate things around as long as it makes sense. So progress, not perfection.
Indeed. All right, so I put this in here, Marty, because I ask this question to all of my students when I teach. We always ask this question when we're in workshops. And so I think it's important to bring it to the forefront. Should an active older adult perform a phase 5 workout? And the question is should they? And Marty, what would your answer be to that?
Heck yes. I kind of already gave you my answer, is absolutely. Under, all circumstances, every single person, including me, including Wendy, including anybody you're training, if they are in the gym, if they're working with somebody, they absolutely need to get to that level of a phase 5 workout that's appropriate for them.
And I don't know what it is. People feel like, if you're at a certain age, like let's say it's 70 or older, like we should basically put these people out to pasture and just let them be on their own. And that is definitely not the case. Guys, people should be active. We need to teach them reactive speed. We need to train them for the speed of life. Again, safely, efficiently, effectively. That's why we use that OPT model, is because we know that we're putting them through the right stages. So now let's go through the next picture, and we're going to give you some stats here on an individual's assessment process. And so as we continue forward and we're looking at this, if we did someone's overhead squat and we see them progressively get better, and then we're like, okay, we have gone through phase 1, we've gone through phase 2, and then we're seeing that there's minimal compensations, then we know that it's going to be okay. Again, we're not going to do something if they're a hot mess and feet are out and knees are in and they can't stand up. That's not when we're going to go into the power phase. So thinking about undulating their periodization, thinking about their programming, I think it's important for sure. And Marty, I mean, I know you can also say this the same. And so when we really want to.
And again, the way we'll show the program here in a second and all that, we'll get to it. But even if you bring in one exercise, that might be the right first step. So for example, I may do correctives and stabilization endurance, and I may just have somebody do a seated band press, because that could kind of check a box of strength for them, but working towards some speed. Again, I'm just laying the breadcrumb trails to what they're eventually going to do. So you're allowed to have these programs not look the exact same for each person. That's why it's called personal training. And that's why we have to have an understanding of the person that is there in front of us. And if I sprinkle in a little bit, before you know, it's a lot.
Yeah. So, let's say that your individual comes in, and the very first time you saw this person, this was like their very first session, you did an overhead squat and you saw that their feet were bilaterally turning out. Their knees were caving in. They had a posterior pelvic tilt and rounded shoulders and a forward head. Unfortunately, we're seeing this more and more in our elderly population, especially because if they are just in a seated position, they haven't been that active. And, it's almost like they're becoming like a C shape. Well, you have the ability, based on the continuum and based on what you know in the solutions table, to help correct these compensations. And so when you reassess every 4 to 6 weeks, hopefully from the time you started, now we're 12 weeks later. So fast forward, and then you do the overhead squat again, and you have a slight posterior pelvic tilt. This is what Marty was saying. Look at where they started, and now look at where they are. And if we progress them in the first 4 weeks into phase 1, and then phase 2 was maybe weeks 4 through 8, and now like maybe we even sprinkled in a little bit of phase 3, a little bit of phase 4, and now what can we do? Can we safely get them to power? My answer is going to be absolutely, if that's the only thing that we're working with. And so Marty and I put together a hybrid type of a workout of something that we've done with our active aging population that kind of blends in. Okay, I still have a slight compensation, but now I want to move them into power. So you're going to see the acute variables have been altered for this particular person. but I don't need to know their 1 to 5 rep. It doesn't have to be extremely 85 to 100% of their 1 rep max. I want them to lift heavy. I want to build bone density. I want to build strength. I want to work on that. However, I also want it to be safe. And I don't feel like my senior needs to be lifting 85 to 100%. I want them to lift heavy, but I also want to make sure that it makes sense. So Marty, you can kind of walk us through the program.
Yeah. And as we move over to the program, I even thought of it. So I'll put it in now is I've had people that are ready for some lower body and they'll do a recumbent bike 10-second intervals, like just, trying to go from, let's say they're at 50 watts to 70 watts, right? That's almost a 50% increase and it's only 10 seconds. So it can be something so simplistic, but don't lose sight for them. That is a high intensity type of workout, right? So, as we go through this here, of course, we're going to start with this soft tissue work, right? So again, we don't need to get into it too much. You could use a hypervoltage Theragun. You could use massage guns. Yes, they might be able to do foam rolling on an elevated table or the ground, depending on their ability. We're looking at the hamstring complex, the adductor magnus, the thoracic spine. Then we're going to get into some static with these same muscles, right? We inhibited. Now we're going to lengthen. Then we're going to do, of course, the ones that you'll basically always see with us, a glute bridge of some level, right? And you'll see the tempo there is the 202. We're looking for our 2 sets of 10, obviously keeping the glutes and abs engaged. Form is always of the essence, right? We got to do it right or you're not doing it right. And that you're programming the body to do it wrong. Then we have standing band hip abduction. It could even be standing hip abduction for now, right? We don't care. It's whatever load's appropriate. But look, we're always maintaining that neutral spine. Always maintain the five proper K kinetic chain checkpoints, and then something like a standing single leg dumbbell cobra, depending on how that works for them. It'd be very easy to do. There's a lot of different ways to do it, dumbbell, band, etc. But you're just starting to get them to accept some weight forward, engage that core, and work on their posture. Then one of Wendy's favorite is the speed ladder multiple plane. They could walk through it for all we care. It's just learning that pattern recognition, controlled, good posture, head up, so they're not just dropping their head down. Hurdles, it could be a step over the hurdles, not a jump over the hurdle, right? It's how quick can you put your foot down, right? Things like that. Prisoner squats at a controlled pace. It could look like potentially a stabilization exercise for somebody, but if that's as fast as they can go, that's as fast as they can go. Triple flexion, triple extension. We're getting those movement patterns engaged. Then we move into the final, the bulk of it, the resistance training, a stagger stance, cable chest press. So now we're activating the core. Then that medicine chest pass with no rebound. Like I explained how I would do with my mom. She throws it, I hand it back to her. So there's no eccentric load right now. Then we go to a standing row to the banded speed row, modified lunge to a speed step up. And again, the speed step up might look very slow, but we're going from that strength, exercise into something explosive, looking at getting those type 2 muscle fiber types to be ready to handle load and move at a quicker pace. And then, of course, the client's choice is probably going to be something of an abs or an arm exercise. Let them have it. And then the cool down is going to be the very same or similar to the warm up, getting those muscles to down regulate that you fired up during the workout.
Yep. And I think it's important too, when you're looking at this, I don't want Marty and I to get an email and say, but your acute variables were wrong.
Right.
No, you're going to see that it's a hybrid. So hence the title, it's a hybrid, meaning we are implementing a little bit of the corrective side. There was still a posterior pelvic tilt. We know that the glutes were still weak. We know that the outer hips are super important based on falls and preventative issues. And it usually is because the glute minimus and glute medius are super weak that are also causing some of the knees to cave in and our hips to eventually give out and we start to have issues. Hip strength is extremely important. Glute strength is extremely important, especially as we age. Hence why that was put into the program. And then when you're looking at the acute variables in the superset, but Wendy, it's a phase 5. It should be 1 to 5 when we're doing the strength. Well, is it okay that this person did 10? Well, yes, because maybe this person too, it's day 1 of their phase 5. And we don't want them, again, to do 85 to 100%. We want them to be heavy for whatever goal that I'm giving them. And then pairing that with some speed work. So again, they're going from heavy to something at a faster speed, mimicking that same movement pattern. And I think sometimes that's where we get caught up. We have done the research for you. All the phases have specific acute variables in order to hit a specific adaptation. However, again, we have the ability to put the personal, like you said, Marty, into the training to design a program that's going to best fit that client. This is something I've done with one of our elderly clients, or our senior clients, because it wasn't important for them to do 1 to 5. It was important for us to work on a posterior tilt and work on thoracic mobility into the rows, but then also to speed it up. So XXX, as fast as they can control. As Marty said, it may not be fast to us, but it's as fast as they have. And if there's a compensation, it's too fast and we slow it down. So just be smart with your programming. This is where some of the blending and creativity comes in, but it's okay to change it if it makes sense, but know that that power isn't going to be maximum power for your elderly client, but it's going to be good for them for life.
Right. No, this is a well laid out plan, and I would use very similar programming and would have a high level of success with something like this. So, when we look at the model, remember, we teach it in a perfect world scenario because you have to learn the fundamentals. We're not telling you that that's the only way to use the model, but start to really look at how you can manipulate and move things around with a purpose based on science and logic. You're going to have so much fun with it. We've also done many other Master Instructor Roundtables. You can go and watch them on the NASM YouTube channel or where else you would download your podcasts. Go back and search through the library. We got some great content. So remember, age is just a number, right? We talked at the beginning. There's some youth that aren't aging well. We've got some people in their 60s and 70s that are rock stars. So don't be scared to challenge your clients, especially if you're going by movement assessments, logical progressions in the OPT model. So assessments are key. Design the program based on the goals and then follow the OPT model. It's really that simple. And then you get creative within the tools and the person, and then you have fun.
Have fun. That's the biggest thing.
Rule number 3, Wendy.
Always. So if you guys have any questions, you can always contact us. You can email me at wendy.batts@nasm.org, or you can find me on Instagram at wendy.batts13.
And my information's right here, dr.martymiller72. And then my email is marty.miller@nasm.org. So Wendy, thanks for putting this together. And I think I came up with an idea. I think we need to dive into some of our youth stats and look at how we can motivate that generation, because we want them to age well like this current generation. So thank you so much for putting this out there. I know it's a passionate topic of yours. And for all of you that joined us this week on the Master Instructor Roundtable, we can never thank you enough. Keep those ideas coming. Make sure you reach out to us. And most importantly, we look forward to seeing you next week on the Master Instructor Roundtable.